What do you mean?
You know, it wasn't easy. I tracked it down mostly through second bidders, people who lost at the auctions. It was in storage, part of an estate collection in Bremen.
Oculus isn't just a horror movie about a haunted mirror. It's a story about memory, denial, and the way trauma rewrites reality depending on who survives it. At its core, the film asks a disturbing question. What if the thing that ruined your family wasn't supernatural, or what if believing it wasn't is the real danger? By structuring the story around two siblings who remember the same trauma in completely different ways, Oculus becomes less about destroying an object and more about confronting the lies we tell ourselves to survive. Kaylie is introduced as someone who refused to forget. Years after the deaths of her parents, she is still obsessed with the laser glass, convinced it was the true case of her family's collapse. Her determination borders on fixation. She doesn't just want to destroy the mirror, she wants to prove it was responsible not only to the world but to herself. Her elaborate setup, the surveillance cameras, environmental controls, timers, and kill switch, is a symbolic of her need for control. Kaylie believes that if she can document the truth objectively, she can finally undo the injustice done to her family and clear both her father's and brother's name. But beneath the logic is something more personal: guilt. Kaylie feels responsible for surviving when everything else fell apart, and the mirror becomes a way to externalize that pain. Tim, on the other hand, represents the opposite response to trauma. While Kaylie clings to believe, Tim clings to disbelief. After years in a psychiatric hospital, he has learned to cope by rejecting anything supernatural. For Tim, accepting that the mirror is real would mean reopening wounds he's worked desperately hard to close. His version of survival depends on believing that their family was simply unwell and that the horror had a rational explanation.
We made up a scary story so we wouldn't have to accept the fact that our father was a murderer. He was. He was a sick man who tortured and killed.
This isn't because Tim is weak, it's because the now is sometimes the only way forward. When Kaylie invites him into her plan, she offers him an out, but emotionally the invitation itself pulls him back into the trauma. Whether she attends to or not, Kaylie needs for validation re-traumatized him. The film never gives us a clear answer as to whether she's trying to save him or needs him there to justify her own beliefs. The sibling dynamic is one of the Oculus' greatest strengths. Kaylie and Tim don't just disagree about the mirror, they represent two incapable coping mechanisms. Kaylie believes the truth is something you confront head on. Tim believes the truth is something you survive by reshaping it. Their conflict isn't loud or melodramatic, it's quiet, tense, and deeply human. Every conversation between them feels like a psychological chess match, which neither fully realizing that the mirror is already several moves ahead. The film's portrayal of the parents, Alan and Marie, is especially unsettling because it shows how quickly a family can collapse once trust begins to erode. Almost immediately after the mirror enters their home, the atmosphere shifts. Alan isolates himself in the office, drawn obsessively to the mirror under the guise of work. Marie becomes increasingly paranoid, sensing something is wrong, but unable to articulate. Their behaviors mirror real-world relationships breaks down, withdrawal, suspicious, emotional distance. The mirror doesn't create new flaws, it amplifies existing ones. It feeds on its insecurity, jealousy, and control, turning small cracks into fatal fractures. Jealousy plays a subtle but a crucial role in Oculus. Alan becomes emotional unavailable, retreating into obsession with the mirror in a way that slowly alienates Marie. Marie also believes that Alan was having an affair, which was not true. His fixation doesn't just distance him, it creates a vacuum where suspicion and fear can grow. Marie, paranoid, isn't irrational, it's intrusive. She senses she's losing her husband not to another woman, but to something she can't see, name, or fight. That uncertainty is what makes it so dangerous. The mirror explores the emotional imbalance with precision. It doesn't immediately turn them violent, it reframes their perception. It nudges them into seeing each other as a threat, turning concern into accusation and love into fear. The horror isn't just supernatural, it's rational. The The mirror thrives in spaces where communication collapses and trust erodes. When Marie finally looks into the mirror herself, the entity immediately redirects her fear, convincing her that the children and even Alan are in danger, or worse, the danger themselves. In that moment, the mirror completes its work, transforming protective instincts into violence. Doesn't create cruelty, it weaponized love using fear to turn family members against one another. One of the most brilliant aspects of Oculus is how it portrays the lie, not as a single deception, but as a shift in reality. The mirror doesn't simply make people see things that aren't there, it makes them misinterpret what is. Time loops, memories overlap, and cause and effect becomes unreliable. The distortion places the audience in the same psychological state as the characters. We begin to doubt what we're seeing, just as they do. The film's editing reinforced this by seemingly blending past and present, showing how trauma never stays in the past, and intrudes, repeats, and reshapes perception. Symbolically, the mirror represents inherent trauma. Doesn't kill immediately, it waits, it observes. It passed from owner to owner, feeding on families over generations. The fact that Kaylie works at an auction house is no accident. It reinforced the idea that trauma is passed down solid and repackaged as a history rather than confronting as damage. Each new owner believes they can control it, understand it, or survive it better than the last, and each one is wrong. Behind the scenes, director Mike Flanagan designed Oculus to function like a psychological maze. The mirror is rarely shown doing anything overly monstrous. Instead, it powers lies in restraint. Practical effects are minimal. The real horror comes from suggestion, misdirection, and timing. Flanagan wanted the audience to feel the same loss of certainty as the characters, never fully sure whether the mirror is acting or whether the characters are destroying themselves. The ambiguity is intentional. The film doesn't want you to feel safe in logic. Kaylie believes that preparation equals control is proven tragically wrong. The kill switch fails, the cameras lie, the plan collapses. In the end, the mirror doesn't just survive, it wins. And the victory feels cruel because it punished both belief and disbelief. Kaylie is destroyed by her obsession. Tim is destroyed by his denial. Neither coping mechanism is enough. By the end of the film, the mirror has already succeeded in fracturing Tim's mind. It convinced him that nothing supernatural was ever there until it's too late to question that belief. In the final moment, Tim doesn't see the mirror on the danger it represents. He sees Kaylie, and in acting on that distorted reality, he kills her. The mirror completes the cycle not through force, but through misperception. The moment echoes the past. When Tim was a child, his hands was on the trigger, but it was his father, under the mirror's influence, who pulled it. The distinction matters. The horror of Oculus lies in the repetition. The mirror doesn't just kill, it rewrites memory, shifting blame, and distorting truth, ensuring the trauma is passed down and replayed until someone finally breaks under its weight. Oculus isn't about a haunted mirror, it's about the stories we tell ourselves to survive trauma, and how those stories can become just as dangerous as the trauma itself. The true horror of the film is not that evil exists, but that it doesn't need to hide. It waits patiently, letting us argue, rationalize, and blame each other until we do, it works for it. I am welcome to the dark side. Thank you for watching, and until then, see you later.